All right, I want to do an example of a truth table from 7D. So when you're looking at a truth table, first of all, they automatically set up the same kind of schema for the truth value combinations for your simple statements here in the blue on the far left. That's always going to be the same. Now the question is, where should I start in dealing with these logical operators? And well, the opposite of asking that is, what is the main operator? The one that ranges over the entire complex statement. The answer to that is, well, let me give you a couple clues. First of all, the main operator will never be inside parentheses, never. So that means I've got two options here, the tilde and the dot. Which of those is the main operator? Well, what do they range over? The tilde ranges over everything to the right of it. So everything that's in parentheses here, but it doesn't range over this stuff in parentheses over on the left. The conjunction sign, by the way, it's however, by contrast, it ranges over this, everything in these parentheses, that's one conjunct, and then the negation of all of this parentheses, that's the other conjunct. So that's the main operator. We're going to get to that last. Now, where should we start? Well, we're going to go as far inside the parentheses as we possibly can. So let's start with this one. It doesn't matter in some ways. We could have started with these parentheses. But I'm going to start with this one. Now, can I deal with the wedge first? No, because the wedge, the disjunction, the or sign, it ranges over two other disjuncts, not A and not B. And until I know what the truth value of not A is and the truth value of not B is, I don't know the truth value of the disjunction. So I'm going to need to deal with the individual disjuncts first. So I can deal with either one of these negation signs first. I'll start with B. All right, so the negation, you remember, it reverses the truth value. It negates the truth value of whatever statement it applies to, in this case, B. So if B is true on line 1, then the tilde sign, the negation is false. B is false, so tilde is true, false, true. Then we do the same thing over here with this one. A is true, so tilde is false. False, true, true. Okay, now we can deal with the or, the disjunction. And remember, the truth conditions for a disjunction for the wedge is that at least one of the disjuncts has to be true, and possibly both. They can't both be false, though. So when we deal with this, let's look at line 1 here. Now, which columns am I looking at? Like, what are the truth values of the two disjuncts? We need to be looking at the truth value of the negations. Why? Because the disjunct that we're dealing with is not just A, but not A. So the truth value of not A is under the not. It's under the negation sign. So we've got a false disjunct and another false disjunct. So what is the truth value of the disjunction, of the wedge, of the or? Well, it's not the case that at least one of them is true. So the disjunction is false. Line 2, we got a false and a true. So we've got at least one disjunct is true, so it's true. Down here, we've got a true and a false, so we're true. We got true, true, that makes it true. Okay, so now we know that everything inside this parentheses, the entire disjunction, these are the truth values for the entire disjunction inside the parentheses. Now, let's move over to this negation sign. The negation ranges over the entire disjunction that is inside the parentheses. That means what the tilde is negating, what it applies to, is the truth values underneath the wedge. That's what you're looking at. So the wedge is false, and on line 1, tilde wedge, the negation sign is true. Line 2, the wedge is true, so tilde is false. Line 3, wedge is true, so the tilde is false. Line 4, wedge is true, so the tilde is false. Okay. Now, yeah, I'll pause right there. Let's go over to the other parenthesis. Now, again, which of these should we deal with first? Well, we've got to deal with the negation first. Why? Because the horseshoe, the antecedent is the A, and the consequent is not B. If we don't know the truth value of not B, then we might not be able to figure out the truth value of the horseshoe. So we've got to start with negation. So B is true, tilde is false, true, false, true. Now, we can deal with the horseshoe. Okay, so we got a if true, then false. Remember, the negation is the truth value of the whole consequent. If true, then false. So that means the horseshoe is, have you reviewed your horseshoe truth values recently? I know this confused people. You got to know it. You got to memorize it. Line 1 is false. If true, then true. True. If false, then whatever it is, remember, if the antecedent of a horseshoe is false, then the horseshoe is true. I don't care how crazy it seems to you, you got to know this. So line 3 is true. Line 4 is true. Take my word for it. The reason is this. Horseshoe is only falsified when the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. None of these other combinations falsifies it. That's one way to think about it. All right, let's move on to our main operator now. So it's a conjunction and. That means both conjuncts have to be true in order for that dot to be true. Now, which columns am I looking at? Well, I'm looking at the main operator of each of the conjunction that's not a good way of saying it. I'm looking at the horseshoe column because that's the truth value of the whole conjunct here, the whole complex statement inside the parentheses. And I'm looking at the truth value of this negation because that negates everything else. That's the other conjunct. All right, so line 1, we've got a false, and no matter what this is, it's still, the dot's going to be false because we need both conjuncts to be true in order to make the dot true. Line 2, we've got a true and a false. So that's going to make it false. Line 3, we've got a true and a false. So it's false. Line 4, we got a true and a false. False again. All right, there's our completed truth table. We got all falses under the main operator. You know what this means? Actually, you haven't learned this yet. You'll learn it next time, but your next lesson. It means this is a necessary falsehood. It's a contradiction. It is not possible for any statement of this form to be true. It's a necessary falsehood. But you'll learn about that later.